In this video, I'm going to share the challenges that I have observed my students dealing with after this first full week of sheltering in place and online learning. My students are college students, and I am Ruth Boma, your online academic coach. The first category of challenges is the task of sheltering in place, and the second category of challenges is the online learning. So what I'm observing in my students of sheltering in place is having to be be alone all day. I have one student whose parent works 12-hour shifts, so she spends the entire day alone with her dog. I have students who have had to shelter in place at their dorm or in their off-campus apartment, and the campus is closed, and they're having to navigate living on the dorm with a closed campus. Of course, they have access to the cafeteria, but everything else is closed. So living alone in the dorm, living alone in an apartment, and in a city that is not necessarily your home. Some of these students, they're not at home. They're not in their hometown. These are students who went away to school. So they are in their dorm or in their apartment in another city, and their university is closed. Their friends, many or most of their friends have gone home. Another challenge my students are facing is being at home with their entire family. So these are students who just recently moved out of their house and did all that transition to living away from home, living on campus, living in an apartment, and now they're back in their home with their family, everyone has to be at home. So living with siblings that are younger, maybe just all of the dynamics of being back at home under the same roof with all of your family, sharing the same space, all at the same time. Parents aren't not necessarily leaving to go to work. Some of them are having to stay and work at home also. And then having to stay in their home and not leave their house to go socialize with their friends or do other things, other activities, normal activities. Another one of my students had to shelter in place, not back home and not at the university, but in a third location with an extended family, because it wasn't safe for this student to go home to her home. So this student is having to live out of a suitcase, not have all her things, and then live with, it was still family, but it was not her home. So having to adjust to that. And I have students who are non-traditional students who are having to deal with all the regular work of taking care of family and taking care of their lives as adults, and finish their college semester online. So a lot of challenges in the simple task of having to shelter in place, along with the rest of the challenges that you and I, everybody is having to face with dealing with sheltering in place. Another category of challenges my students are facing is the challenge of being online and learning online. And one reason why this is a challenge is because the pedagogy is a big fancy word for teaching practices, how to teach effectively, the best practices for communicating new knowledge to students. That's called pedagogy. So the philosophy of teaching and how to teach, what are the best teaching activities and experiences for a classroom, that pedagogy is not the same as pedagogy for online learning. So this transition from face-to-face practices of teaching to online practices of teaching, this is a huge shift, and professors are very intelligent and capable people, and they're making that shift, but it is a process. It is a transition, and we're all going to have to be very flexible. Some information is really TBD, to be determined. Some professors haven't finished the task of determining what changes need to be made, how the learning objectives will be met for the semester, and how these learning objectives will be assessed. That means assignments, tests, test grades, etc. Now, another big change in the online learning task is the level of independent learning. Every college student is being asked to become an independent learner and do a lot of learning on their own. You couldn't possibly do all your learning in the classroom. So all college students are being asked to become independent learners. But once you become an online learner, the level of independence in learning has to increase significantly. So, for example, I have a student right now who's taking a course that is reading based and discussion based. So the readings are very dense, very complex, and the comprehension of that reading happens during the classroom discussions, during the professor's comments within the classroom discussions. And now all that learning and comprehending of those dense readings has to happen by reading discussion boards. So it's reading the readings, the assigned readings that are very complex and very dense, and then reading the discussion comments and the discussion threads in order to understand what you read. This is a lot of reading. A lot of information is being delivered, and a lot of learning is happening through reading. So that's a difference, a big change. Some of my it's like the first day of school all over again. If you remember the first day of school of your first semester, or even just the first day of this semester, maybe in the fall, there's that first week is a lot of onboarding where you read your syllabi, you get organized, you get maybe your planner going or a calendar going. You just figure out your routine, what are you going to do when and where everything is. So remember that first week of school, you do a lot of organizing, and you're receiving new syllabi and having to make a plan in response to all those new syllabi. Well, like this week is like the first day of school all over again, because most professors have revised their syllabi and given them to the students. So the students are going to have to update their calendar and revise their schedule and routine. Now, some of my students are finding that the learning experience in the classroom has been replaced with even more online activities. So more time is being required for that class in the week. And it is a big demand, a big challenge. Now, some of my students who have been working with me since the beginning of the semester, and we've already established good organization, good time management, good managing of energy and making decisions, good stress management, good study skills. Those students are finding that they're getting all their online work done, and they have time left over in the week. So for those students, I'm working with them on finding creative things that are engaging and interesting, to keep engaged, keep learning other things, like developing other hobbies or skills, or working on a project, in order to stay centered and stay productive for the duration of this shelter-in-place experience that we're all going through. Now, a lot of the professors, I've already mentioned earlier, that they haven't finished thinking through, they haven't finished doing the work of transitioning from classroom to online. So some of the students are experiencing information or stuff that they just don't know. It's to be determined. And that's a category of information, just a whole category of information of we don't know yet. And that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable not to know what's going to happen in the course, what we have to do, especially in light of finals being about 5 weeks away. So what I've done in today's video is just give a quick summary of the challenges that I am seeing and experiencing with my students. What I want to leave you with is the lens. One way to look at what we're going through right now, and that is maybe create a little T-chart and fold a piece of paper in half, and on one half of the paper make a list of all the things that you can control, and on the other side make a list of all the things that you cannot control. Now, the things that you cannot control generally are going to be things that we don't know, like when will this assignment be due and the professor hasn't told me? Am I going to still have to write that big paper? Am I still going to have that cumulative objective exam? We don't know everything yet. Another thing that falls under things that we cannot control are things that are outside of our immediate life, like what is happening nationally and worldwide and decisions that our government is making. We cannot control that. So keep in mind all the things you cannot control. Just make a list of it. The fact that your living situation, there are things that you cannot control. And then on the other side, make a list of the things that you can control, things that are within your power, things that are changeable and doable for you right now. That could be choosing to, one of my students decided to do some P90X videos in their morning routine. Another student decided to do print their calendar up again and put it up on the wall. Another student decided to do daily walks outside. Another student decided to reach out to their neighbor and walk the dog for them because they were individuals that had to be at work and the dog was left alone a lot. So think about things that you can control and be solutions minded as you encounter challenges and problems that are coming our way. This is Ruth Beaumont, your online academic coach.